again to tomorrow's best practices today. Today, we're joined by Cari Jaquet, who has had an incredible career as a CMO multiple times in this B2B world of ours. Cari is currently CMO at Normalize, where she is bringing the data security posture management category to life, demystifying the advances there, bringing customer stories forward. These are folks that are thinking ahead in a world of large language models and AI and how to manage your security posture around that. Normalize was acquired recently by Proofpoint. And so Carrie's also working to bring the DSPM platform, messaging, and solutions all in under Proofpoint's data security portfolio. Prior to that, she was CMO at CoreView. Prior to that, she was head of marketing at BigPanda. And the BigPanda story is an interesting one that we're going to dig into for sure. Carrie joined BigPanda 2 months before the pandemic. And at that time, there was Series B company valued around $200 million. In the next 2 years or so, that company grew from 130 people to about 300 folks, a team of two marketers, to a large marketing organization powering 85% of the pipeline into Big Panda, and a category leader that was valued at $1.2 billion. That's an incredible maybe a little bit over 2 year run. So we want to talk about that with Carrie today as well. Anyway, all of that background to set the stage. Welcome, Carrie, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Clark. I appreciate it. And yes, I'm excited to share my journey.
Well, it's an incredible journey, right? And so if you just go to LinkedIn and you know and look at you and look you up, it looks, of course, like this step through a number of increasing or roles of increasing responsibility, director, VP, CMO. But we all know it's not quite that simple. And I'm just really intrigued by your specific path. Can you talk a little bit about your journey, um, and what it takes in general, I guess, to be ready to make each of those steps in one's career path? How did you think about that? Was your career path sort of an architected thing that you went after? Did it sort of happen to you? How would you advise folks?
Sure. Well, I should start at the very beginning by saying when you think about CMOs, they come through either product marketing or through brand and corporate, or they come through demand gen. Coming up through the sales organization, field marketing, that sort of
Yeah,
thing. And
one of those legs. Yeah.
yeah, and mine was pretty straightforward in that I got bit by the demand gen bug pretty early on in my career. I was doing copywriting for Sears at their regional office where they were doing decentralized advertising and writing copy for newspaper ads, for flyers, for inbox, your mailbox little circulars. And I would talk to the folks who own product lines, and someone would say, hey, we've got too much detergent at the Visalia store and too many vacuum cleaners at the Sacramento store. And
Of course.
I would write copy and very targeted for the different regions. And then a few weeks later, we'd be looking at a point of sale report and they'd say, whoa, there's no more detergent at the Visalia store. And we have two vacuum cleaners left at the Sacramento store. And I completely the thought of making an impact like that on a business just transformed my thought around what I was doing every day. And I realized I wanted to stay close to sales and I wanted to be part of that engine that drove bottom line results. And that's really been the only thing that has been consistent in my career is that I seek places that are looking for someone who's come up through that. Even as a full stack marketing person, I still get the most excited when I think about and talk about the business of driving demand.
I think there's a natural, I wanted to ask you, because I think there is a natural assumption maybe early in your career. Well, maybe you start in startups, uh, there's a lot of things that are attractive about that, your ability to make an impact, your ability to, three people can make a decision really moves the needle for the company.
Hmm.
Um, there's upside, and then you get successful. Maybe that startup gets bought, or maybe you get recruited, and it sort of feels, or at least maybe I felt. Maybe I'm projecting. Early, at some point in your career, you're like, I'm just going to keep working at more and more powerful companies, bigger companies. And I was like you, I recognize, kind of different horses for different courses, right? What I functionally really enjoyed doing and started to get good at was, kind of scale up maybe a little bit earlier than that stage. Um, so what do you do? Do you have, so for folks that are kind of trying to evaluate that, maybe think about like look at your career path and taking your advice of shopping around, what would you say are an attribute or two at each of those stages that you think marketing leaders need to have that are different from the others?
Well, before, I will answer that, but I also want to say, even when you have tried something like PLG at a company or going downstream, and then you go to another company or you make a pivot, that expertise, as you said before, matters, and here's why. Later, somebody is excited that you come ready to tell them where all the dangerous things are that you've gone through, and they're ready to pay you to avoid those mistakes, right? And so if I have been to that movie before and then I get hired at another company and someone utters the words security and PLG all in one sentence, I'm like, ooh, wait, let me just tell you about this, like this one
Yeah.
piece. So I do think that's, it's all accretive. It's all, nothing about it is dilutive. So um, when you are thinking about a early stage, whether it's pre Series A or Series A area, you when people say you have to roll up your sleeves and actually do work, that's not a joke. You are maybe getting the copy or paper ordered. You're if you're at an event, you're bringing all the water in for setting it up and the sodas and stuff, and you're absolutely doing marketing work, but you're doing a lot of other things that are going to support the company in that way, right? So you're not just going to the event, you're setting up the booth, you're getting the collateral into the acrylic stands, et cetera. And so that may excite some people because there is just a hands-on feeling, and you are making real big contributions every day. Now you're in Series B, you're in a repeatable business model, you've proven market fit, you have money in the bank, and now it's about making sure you don't lose sight of who your target audience is, and that every dollar still matters. But now you've got some ability to get content syndication, and now you're doing some sophisticated things. You're experimenting with digital, you're doing maybe slightly nicer collateral, that you're not laying it all out in Canva.
Right.
And then, at some point, that company does well and they move into a Series C, and they're doing 50, 60, 70 million dollars in revenue. And now it's really about it. I still feel like the most important thing is stay close to sales, because now you've got a channel strategy going, and you've got 40 sales people in the US and 20 in EMEA and 10 in APAC. And it's a different kind of conversation, because now you're talking about localization, and you're talking about, if I run a campaign, I can't just turn one on today and it's running. I have a factory that is relying on me to deliver some things, and everyone's got to make their number. And so
Yeah.
that's a different discipline.
And competing numbers, right?
Oh yeah,
Now you're
absolutely.
managing a portfolio, and
Well,
it's a
that's
portfolio
the
of
next one.
products.
Yeah.
It's a product portfolio of regions, right?
Yeah. And then you've got, okay, now we did really well and we've got 300 million in the bank. So now we're going to acquire a couple of companies. And now I've got brand dilution, or I've got to do some brand cleanup, consolidation, pricing, packaging. There's just a lot of, sophistication that occurs at that level that you just don't see when you're at a Series A company with one product or maybe a platform and you're selling a couple of services off of it. So I think in every case, it's exciting. And whatever you choose, lean into it. But if something just feels like, gosh, I miss the days when I was setting up the booth and getting the, acrylic stands put in and I felt some kind of way, then maybe the large enterprise is not for you. But there are complications and complexities in every stage. So it's really about sort of finding what gets you up in the morning, what gets you excited to do the work that you're doing and make a difference.
That's great. Know thyself. And I think that, and do your homework, right? As much as you can. I mean, more and more information is available, obviously, online about the kind of company that your prospective employer keeps, and who are the partners, and what is the market, and what is the dynamic, and what is the funding, landscape, and you kind of get a sense, I think, if they're building to product market fit, if they're scaling up, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
these stages that you're talking about. Um, and I know one thing you and I have talked about is to not, you don't have to just rely on yourself for this, but the power of mentorship, the importance of having a group of mentors that you can, and maybe you just mentioned one or two of them, that you can get, that you get perspective from, and maybe you've been in these areas that you haven't yet, or know you well from outside of yourself and can help you know thyself as well.
Yeah. And I think that was a big lesson for me when I was making the move from a VP of marketing to a CMO. I knew I didn't know what I didn't know. And the, having the counsel of people who have been there and who have done that and understand the board level expectations, the CEO expectations, shareholder expectations, the rest of the
Yeah.
organization, cross functional expectations was super helpful. And I built a scorecard just for that purpose to say, this is what I'm hearing is important in order for me to move to this next level. What do I honestly think I'm capable of in each of these areas? And I did Harvey balls, just again,
Hmm.
simple way to sort of assess. And I was very honest with myself. And I also had an honest conversation with my CEO to say, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, this is what I think the gaps are, and here's how I could fill that. And, I had a conversation, interestingly enough, with an HR person. We were talking about career progression. And the question was, does the organization owe you career progression paths? Does the organization owe you the here's what you'd have to do to move from here to here? And no, you absolutely should own that on your own, but there's nothing wrong with asking for support or going to people who have done it and trying to understand, like, what did it take. And so it was a combination of those things that helped me say, okay, I have conviction about this and this is what I'm going to do and here's where I'm going to head.
It's free to give you a better title
Yeah.
instead of more money, right? And so you see these, you see title inflation all the time, right? And so, and we'll talk about fractional CMO roles, I know, before we're done here, but a lot of times when I've come in to help organizations in a fractional role, it's frankly, because there's somebody there that's a VP of marketing that isn't really operating at all as a VP, but they were a director that was, they wanted to retain and was giving them enough trouble about it that they gave them a title. And so then all your expectations are out
Mm-hmm.
of whack,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's developing you into that role, because it's like, well, you arrived, right? Just sets up all sorts of bad behaviors.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to be, we're talking about the different stages of organizations and all that, and the growth of organizations. I want to make sure we talk about the big panda journey that you're
Yeah.
all, because we've got somebody here that has done the thing, took something from figuring itself out right in front of a pandemic to a unicorn.
Yeah.
So, what was that like? I guess is the broadest question I would ask. But particularly in your role, like I said, I think you were like the second marketing person, right? When you got there, something about like that. Like, what are the lessons that that you would share from that crazy journey?
Well, I'll start by saying sometimes marketing folks, we pat ourselves on the back and we say we did a great job without realizing that a lot of it does boil down to some market um, functions, market moments. And so, interestingly enough, with BigPanda, the pandemic was helpful for us. I mean, it was terrible in a million different ways, but when it came to the business of IT operations, we were a SaaS-based IT ops company, and our biggest competitor was an on-prem company. And so right off the bat, we had an upper hand and we leveraged it. And so that, that piece wasn't really something that marketing did, but we jumped
Yeah.
on it, right? Opportunistically,
The
we jumped
market
on
did
that.
that,
The
right? Yeah.
market moment did that.
Yeah.
The second thing that the market did and that, COVID did was it created a hunger for community between a bunch of people who used to get together in an ops center who now were all on their kitchen counters or sitting at their desks in their bedrooms working. And we also jumped on that community vibe and we opened up a Slack channel for people to share jobs, and we built our campaigns around companies who were thriving during the pandemic, like Sony PlayStation, like Roblox, and
Mhm.
those who were struggling, like Expedia and others. And we changed the tone of our messaging and our campaigns based on whether they were thriving or struggling. And so, again, not something marketing did, but something marketing understood, and we leaned into that. The third thing was that our executives, our board, never pulled back. They didn't panic and say, well, based on the fact that we're not doing any events now, we're going to cut the marketing budget. What they said is, what are you going to do with the event dollars you had? How are you going to spend those to keep momentum? And we said, we're going to do virtual events. And literally, like, words are coming out of my mouth as we're kind of creating this infrastructure to start
Yeah.
doing, cocktail tastings where we're shipping little drams of whiskey to people's homes and inviting them to come community wise, like come and have conversation with other IT ops people about the things that you're dealing with. And in the process, we're listening and we're learning, and then we're doing a webinar on that topic. And so it was, like I said, I wouldn't chalk it up to anything marketing did specifically. It was a forcing function that then caused us and allowed us to experiment, to just be open to being brokers of human beings wanting to connect with each other, and that the board and the execs never pulled back. And I know that a lot of my peers struggled because that wasn't the decision their boards took, and
Right.
it was really hard. And so I think I wouldn't take credit for that, but the fact that the sales organization loved what we were doing. We had PG days that were just so much fun because even though we were all remote, we got to be together doing these great PG days. I think those were some of the things that made it successful. Now, what does it feel to go from 200 million valuation to a 1.2 billion? It's incredible, and knowing that it took every single person in the company to work together at a time when it was so distracting and you couldn't travel to see customers, and like we just made it work. And so really that focus on team, whatever that construct looks like, is
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
So what did your team go from? It went from a couple of
It
people,
was
then
a
two
couple
two
people when I
years
met the,
later.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the funny part was when I got there, there were two people and they were both event marketers. But
So that portfolio had been established. The marketing portfolio was established. Yeah.
100%. And when I got there, they had just finished budget planning. So I looked at the budget and I realized, okay, for 2020, I've got to do what they've already committed to doing, which is a bunch of events. And it's a wash. and COVID hit, and we threw that playbook out, obviously. Well,
Yeah.
that playbook got thrown out for us. And suddenly these two people that were event people uncovered themselves, and they were the best campaign people ever, really. And I
Oh,
recruited someone else and
wow.
brought
Yeah.
in, yeah, and really converted themselves into to more than just in-person events. And we did virtual user groups. We did our big customer conference. But it was all virtual, and we did
Yeah.
it for 2 years. Um, and we were almost sad when it was like, oh, Gartner's actually going to do their thing in person. Like,
We got to go to Orlando. Yeah. Yeah. Well, how big? So, how big was the team by a couple of years later?
11
Like, how
people.
did you build that team? I'm kind of curious. You start. It's so interesting because you started often. If we come into organizations that are around that stage, there's not a ton of marketing people. There's usually though. It's usually not two events, folks.
Right,
If you have
right.
two people, right? So you kind of start in an odd opening configuration. How did you build the team out? What did you add when over the course of those 2 years?
So
And what was the
yeah,
logic?
the logic. So pretty quickly we did customer marketing. And I do that everywhere I go because I believe that regardless of what you're selling, customers selling to customers is a lot easier than you trying to sell the customer story
Sure.
without them. And so I hired a customer marketing person who did everything from let's engage our customers with a steady beat of communication all the way to what's our reference program, what's our advocacy, peer reviews, all of that. That's got to be a dedicated person because when they wake up every single morning, they're not thinking about leads. They're thinking about connection and advocacy, and so that's an important one. On the campaign side, I brought in someone who is an expert at campaigns, and her thing is, campaigns in a box. I'm going to deliver a bunch of these things that are pre-built, ready to go, so that the digital team, the field marketing folks, anybody can pick this up, use it. And so even our channel partners could be using our campaign assets. And
Because
we
you had a
were,
lot of indirect, you had an indirect channel that
we
was
did have yes, yeah,
very strong. So yeah, you need to
yeah.
be able to package some of this stuff up. Yeah.
That's right. And then we started partnering with companies like Datadog and AWS. And so we needed someone who was thinking about regional and strategic partners and what are the, co-branded campaigns we can be doing because we were getting lift from those brands during a time when, again, our reps couldn't go to a golf tournament with GuidePoint or couldn't go to meet with their partners and get walked into accounts. So that co-marketing activity was really essential, and so we built that out. Then field marketing, and the reason for field marketing is, and this may be right or wrong, but this is how I think. I think that there are people who are doing one-to-many campaigns, and they have
Hmm.
a list of, let's say, 8,000 accounts, 6 to 10 people in each account, and they're trying to do a surround strategy. So they're doing micro-segmented campaigns to those folks, trying to just warm them up, get the air cover. Then in the field, there are field marketing people who are doing one to few, and they're doing everything from I take the lead that came in from that webinar, and now I'm going to do something a little bit more high touch with them,
Yeah. Hands-on,
or
a
yeah,
little
or
more
deal
intimate. Yeah.
acceleration or whatever. And at the
Right.
time, like, you got to know, we were doing cameo videos. So if we would find out, let's say that someone at USAA was celebrating his 20th year at USAA, we would find out what his favorite, who his favorite celebrity was, and we would get a cameo done and give it to the rep and do a campaign like that.
That's
We
awesome.
were trying to sell to, I think it was Petco, and we collected pictures of all of the pets in the company. And then we did a quick calculation that basically said if each of us is spending $80 to $150 a month on our pets, we're spending about, $500,000 a month just from this company. And we
Right.
rolled that poster up and shipped it to a couple of people at Petco. So it was like we were, doing super creative, high touch custom kinds of things because that's what was breaking through, like direct mail. When someone back in the day, pre-COVID, if you got a direct mail piece from a vendor, it'd be like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
Then when COVID hit and you're like, oh my God, I got mail from
I got
somebody.
mail.
It was so exciting. And so,
Look,
yeah,
it
that's what
rattles. There's
that
something in it.
exactly it's whiskey, but
It sloshes.
we were doing a lot of that through field marketing, and so we had 3 field marketing people by the time we were done, and then the campaign folks building the campaign kits and doing the one-to-many, and then the corporate events person who was doing the big user group, but again, all virtual, but doing the
Yeah.
big user groups, or if Gartner, was doing their online virtual or RSA became virtual, we were right there doing those as though they were, big, huge corporate events for us. So,
That's what, whenever there's a big market shift, right? Whenever there's a tectonic shift, um, that's how you see it play out, right?
yeah.
So we've talked about the difference between the kind of the operational sort of vice president marketing role and the universe that kind of opens up as a CMO and the stakeholders and the responsibilities. In your career, you've seen many different stages here, and we've talked about them. What are some attributes of that threshold that an organization like it's time for you to have a CMO? And if all enough of the boxes aren't checked, sometimes people go this fractional CMO route. You and I have each, been fractional
Mhm.
CMO at growing organizations. How can you help an organization recognize that they're at that gate, and whether it's time for them to go through, or maybe it does make sense to use a fractional leader in that role for some amount of time.
Well, I think first off, it's about, board expectations and who, don't hire a CMO if you're not going to give that person a seat at the table and make some decisions with you about where the business is headed. So if what you're looking for is someone who's doing real transactional kind of marketing, I don't know that you need, a full-time CMO. I think a fractional one is going to come in and solve some point problems and maybe get the team squared away or build the right plumbing or whatever it is. But when you start to think about those growth moments, or, we're going to go from a Series B to a Series C, or we're going to go public, or, some of those pivotal moments where it's like, I need someone in this seat who has done whatever that thing is and who can help us get there in a shorter, faster time frame without as many mistakes as they might have experienced along the way. I think that's what matters. Yeah. And honestly, sometimes it's that there is a layer of VPs who need someone who's been there to help bring them up as well. I think
Hmm.
that's always important, is that you're not coming in just to like push the strategy down. You're actually trying to bring the next round of CMOs up. And so I sometimes it feels like decisions are made based on dollars. Like, do we have enough dollars to bring in a CMO? Do we have enough? And that shouldn't be the conversation. The conversation is, how strategic is marketing for you? Will they have a spot at the table to have a dialogue about the future of the company, the way that the culture of the company shows up in the product, in the way the product's delivered, in the way that, employees are hired, fired, all of those things. Someone coming in with a CMO mindset is going to be thinking way broader than what a lot of companies expect, in terms of their span of control.
Yeah.
So be ready. That's the other part, is if the CMO comes in, be ready for them to play a role in those things, because that's why you hired them. I have it's not anything scientific, but I have a side by side that I did about, going from a VP of marketing to a CMO. If anybody who's watching this or listening to this wants a copy of it, hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll send it over to you. And there are so many great resources out there now about this journey, about moving, from one stage to another and career progression in the marketing world, that I would say, most often I spend my time talking to young folks who are coming out of college who are saying, I got a marketing degree. Now what? and, and so, my advice is usually go try to sell something for a couple of months. Go be an inside salesperson, because
Hmm.
until you have empathy for what a salesperson has to do every day,
Absolutely.
you can't really do marketing well. Like you just go work at Macy's for a couple minutes, and
Yeah.
or Nordstrom or wherever, and then think about how marketing can help them, and what role you play. Because I always say, like, maintenance marketing or mick marketing, where it's like, I'm just doing this thing. Like, why are you doing this thing? Why, because the person before me did this thing, or because this is what it's supposed to be. It's like, oh, no, no, no. Like, let's stop that. And in fact, one of my practices is, stop, start, continue every single week, every single month. Ask yourself, what things should I stop doing that aren't really benefiting anybody, that aren't driving the results that the business needs, so that I can start doing some other things that the field is asking for, or that I've thought about that might be interesting to try. And then what things should I continue doing because I do see a good, ROI or yield from it. And I think too often, and I've been this person, you spend 3 months coming up with the theme, getting it approved. You get the creative done. It is so sexy. You're like so excited. And then you realize, like, it's not going to work. You run it anyway. That's just like you, because you're like, it's taken me 6 months to get this thing out the door. I am not going to throw it away. But
Right.
it's not worth doing. It really isn't worth doing. And in the end, you're not proud of what you did. So
It's the
be,
myth of the sunk cost, right? Well, we
yeah,
can't
yeah,
not launch it now.
yeah,
And you're only going to be more disappointed. Like knowing, watching something fail that you were pretty sure was going to fail is one of the worst feelings
the
in business, because you
worst.
know that, and then you've wasted all that time that you could have, when you could have cut bait earlier,
Yeah,
and start and close that loop between effort and results. I love your stop, start, continue, because it feeds first of all kind of a constant evaluation. I'm a big believer in, but also it drives you at results. It drives you an outside in point of view about this. It's like, well, why are we, like, if we're not showing the results, why would we? Why
right.
would we keep doing this? Why aren't we doing something else, right? And gets you into that kind of a questioning, curious stance, instead of a maintenance, like you say, marketing, like, turning
Yeah.
the crank, job security mindset. In the year ahead here, what are tech, what are the shifts in technologies? What are the new technologies? Obviously, AI, from generative AI
What's
on
that?
to search, its impact on search, etc. Obviously is a big wave coming through 2025. Is there anything else that can fit into the conversation around AI that we should be thinking about, or how are we taking down the AI opportunity in 2025?
Gosh, it's so crazy how um, people are worried about AI. And I guess for me, I don't think about it as, a tool that I use to get something completely out the door. I use it as a brainstorming tool. I use it as a outline builder. I use it as, answering some questions. And then from there, my output is smarter, my output is better, it's more efficient. But I wouldn't say, if I were a writer, AI is going to obsolete me. AI will only obsolete you if you let it, but AI actually could be an incredible partner to you, if you understand that relationship. And I do have kind of a creepy relationship with my AI tools, because I say good morning to them, and I thank them for all the work they do. And I know that's ridiculous, but
Hey man, when they are our overlords, this may
See,
pay
this is
off. So
so
doesn't
I
hurt.
it doesn't hurt, and I do think of them as partners, just as I would anybody else who's very, very smart and is bringing good ideas to the table. And then the best idea wins, and it gets reworked into something that I feel proud of and that I touched, I helped craft. And so I think that that's one piece about AI. And I think the other piece is that while we might, as marketers, be struggling with how to use AI, how not to use AI, I would just say, like, remember that it's all about that personalization and being unique. If I can look at something and know that, you didn't write it. Like, Cari, I noticed you went to Sam Houston State University, and that is very exciting to me. It's like, no, just stop that. Come on now. Like, that's not necessary. So just, try to remember that behind all this, there are people who are going to be reading it, people who are going to be watching it, people who are going to be looking at it and possibly buying the thing that you want to sell them. And you just need to, invest the time to take what's good about what you got from from the AI system that you're using. Whether, again, I use even Canva for brainstorming ideas.
Right.
I use every single tool that has AI embedded in it as a function to help me just get there faster. The other piece is that if you think we're struggling with AI, our customers are struggling with AI. So having empathy also around how to think about the ways we market that we do AI. So if we're a security company or we're a data company and we're talking about AI this and AI that, I just think we need to not assume that everybody is moving at the same pace that we are, or that everyone is ready to embrace it as much as we are. And we need to be
Yeah.
super clear about, like, why does it matter? AI in and of itself doesn't matter. It's the underlying value that we deliver to our customers through that we should be communicating. It happens to be run by, large language models or whatever. But that to me is like a bunch of nuances we need to get comfortable with as marketers.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think as marketers and as go-to-market professionals, when AI comes up, those are you think about generative AI and the writing and the weird, seven-fingered images and all this kind of stuff. But what AI is really also what is going to unlock in scientific realms and research realms and places where you can run a million experiments that you just
Hmm.
physically can't run, etc. It's going to be it's such an evolutionary step in terms of the tools we use
Hmm.
to figure out our world. Um, what we have to what we have to figure out is how we interact with it, right? What we allow it to do, what it's going to be able to do in terms of the balance of that human element and maintaining
Yeah.
that human element.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think a lot of folks have pause, in the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, I will say, although obviously it's true across the globe. Everyone is asking the question, what are we doing about AI? If we're not
Hmm.
talking about AI, we're not, if we don't have McConaughey talking to people about AI at the Super Bowl and Salesforce, it's like this is an exceedingly thin wedge that we're talking to. But go on, but you're just not perceived as being with it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of become its own self-fulfilling conversation in that, well, we're going to say something about it. Let's
Right.
come up with something to say as a marketing positioning as much as what you're actually doing with it.
Yeah, I envision, and it's no different than any other topic that gets hot and whatever. You go to RSA or you go to one of these big conferences, and what I envision or what I'd love to see is some company putting up a sign that says what they actually do, but then someone just in handwriting adds with AI and AI plus AI powered by AI, like, but so that it's clear that, yeah, like, of course we're going to do what is going to make us smarter, make us more efficient, make the product better? Yes. And it happens to be AI today, and it will be something else, in the future, as it was every decade. There's something that we all say,
That's
like,
the
it's
next
the
wave.
cloud. It was the cloud. We have everything
I'm
in the
not going to
cloud.
talk about how many waves I've watched come through
Right.
in this public
So it's like,
forum. Yeah, absolutely.
don't lose your soul to this thing. It's a good set of tools, and it'll do things that are, not humanly possible in some places, but like, don't lose the human element to like describe it and think about it. So
Right, right.
it's
Put
not
put
supposed to
it in
make
that
us
frame.
dumber. It's supposed to make us smarter.
Very good, very good. Um, Gosh, well, thanks for spending so much of this time
Thank
with us,
you.
Carrie. We talked obviously a lot of professional your professional history in the front and your thoughts and your advice on all these things. Really appreciate it. It's an important part of the Leadtail community for us to be able to come together and learn from each other, but also to the human element that you were just talking about. Um, we're all folks that just have other interests as well and things going on. So we always liked, as part of that community, we like to spend a little bit of the podcast talking about the things that you like and the things you spend your time doing, or anything you'd share with the group of folks that are gathered today, listening to us.
So I live in a small town south of San Jose that allows me to have a pig and two goats and 10 chickens and four dogs and three cats. And so like my daughter, if she were watching this, she'd be like, "Do you want to mention me at all?" Who I'm very proud of. But when I'm done with all the Zoom calls and the meetings and the budget discussions and are we going to go to Black Hat this year or whatever, I love going out and just being with my animals and, having sort of like that like, this is real life, this is real life. And so that's my second love, my daughter being my first. Um, so,
Yeah.
and I know you asked me about, the walk-off song. I did also want to say that if anyone wants to hear me rap, I'm a great rapper. I do Beastie Boys. I do Digital Underground. I can do it in Kermit the Frog voice if you'd like as well. So I'm available for bar mitzvahs, weddings, any kind of reception, corporate events. Just hit me up. I'm talented in that way.
I, I think we're going to have you on one of our spirited conversations then, our live gatherings, right? Where we get
I
a
hope
drink
Kermit
in
the
hand.
Frog
That sounds
here.
more like a spirited conversation, sort of offering that we're gonna get out of you one of these days, Carrie.
I'll do it.
And we did. We talked about the walk off music. We don't often have walk off music for the guests, but when we do, it's something really special. So talk to us a little bit about the song that we're going to hear as we wrap up the podcast today.
Sure. This is by my favorite artist, because Prince is dead. So my second favorite artist, Steve Poltz. He's a folk singer. He's a story writer. He contributed to Jules' song, "I Was Made for You." So
Mhm.
you would know a lot of his songs, but Steve wrote a song that's about wanting all his friends to be happy, and all the words, every single word matters to me. Like I love every sentiment in it. And so when you said, and tell us your favorite song or something, I was like, oh, no question. I would say, "I Want All My Friends to Be Happy" by Steve Poltz.
Well, and that's the note we're going to leave it on. So thanks again
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
time
It
and
was
all your
fun.
knowledge and your wisdom. And we'll let Steve take it away.